Hello, everyone. Welcome to Word Funk. I am Leon Thomas. I am joined by Austin Yorsky and Johnny Maloney. Austin, how much lube are you using right now?
I mean, I'm not using it currently. I used it past tense because I have a squeaky chair, which is I would say, a suboptimal choice for a podcaster. And I kept putting off doing something about it until like 2 minutes before recording when I thought to myself, there's probably WD-40 in this house. And I went looking and I found a blue can, which just said in big letters on the front, lubricant. So I guess lubricant brand lubricant, maybe the generic stuff. And then I just blasted my chair with it. Didn't read the label. I have no idea what its intended use was, but I don't know. Listen, guys, can you hear my chair?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I just thought it would be lubier.
I think maybe you misdiagnosed what your problem is, Austin, because as I understand it, Florida at this time of year is very lubricated.
Oh, God, guys, It's so bad. As of this recording Wednesday, there are 3 hurricanes on their way here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
I was trying to talk to you about it last night, but all I got was that classes haven't even been canceled yet.
Yeah, you sent me a DM just checking on me, and I was like, listen, I got to do reading because I have class tomorrow and also the rest of the week and probably next week. The last time there was a hurricane of note here, which I think was last year, might have been the year before, the only day we got off was they sent an email in the morning saying classes that day were canceled. And it's like, people were probably already on their way over to campus. Like, you didn't save anyone's time or life.
Why? Look, I understand that, like, it's more common for there to be a hurricane in Florida than, say, Kansas. Mm-hmm. But I still feel like a hurricane is just as deadly to a human body, whether that person is a Floridian or a Kansan. I may be saying that wrong, but
both yes and no. On one hand, I've been through so many hurricanes. There's an extent to which I am numb to it, and that's probably dangerous. Like, I went outside during, I think it was Wilma, which was like a category 4 or 5. I was just like, oh, I just want to go for a run or something. Like, I just didn't care. And I know a lot of people like that. But I think on the other hand, because we know the hurricanes are so common, our buildings are built differently in such a way as to withstand wind more than your average building. And I know, like, where I grew up, there was houses that were on stilts. I don't know if I assume that's not common in other places. I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's just like houses up on stilts because it's gonna flood every couple of years, and it's just like we're prepared. It's fine.
It occurs to me that a house on stilts isn't as wind resistant as you might think it is.
I'm sure someone accounted for that. I have many areas of expertise. Architecture is not one.
Okay. Well, no, what I'm saying is, like, how do I put this? Like, I understand, like, your buildings are better, but you yourself are still the same befleshed kind of person that, like, I am.
Presumably.
I mean, you're a little taller, but besides that.
I just Googled stilt house, and apparently they're also called pile dwellings or palafites. And I'm looking.
They're just tree houses with plumbing. What are you doing?
No, they're like full houses. They just happen to have little leggies. They're good.
Okay.
So
right.
like you say, oh yeah, I'm still human. I still can die from hurricane. Yeah, I think the biggest worry is getting hit by something. Like if I'm going for a walk during it, like that's probably a big deal. But for the most part, like the part of hurricanes that get most people is like people who have limited mobility, who are already sick, and that's exacerbated by like sudden, decrease in availability of water.
Or
and
people
it's like,
who hoard like those little magic bath sponges that when you put them in water, they blow up to like 20 times the size that they normally would be.
Yeah,
those people are a huge hurricane liability.
Every hurricane season, 10 people on average are killed by giant T-Rex sponges that crush them to death against the walls of their home.
Well, they're not shrinky dinks. What are they called? I can't remember.
Growy blowies. What's the opposite of a shrinky dink? I don't know.
I can't recall.
Somebody
I'm sure will correct me or let me know.
Yeah, If you know, write the show.
That's the cool thing about doing internet content is that you will always get corrected. There's no universe in which you get away with saying something wrong if anyone's paying attention.
But this is the thing is that I'm saying I can't remember, and I'm not so bothered that I want to Google it up. So if somebody wants to do that for me, you go right ahead. But I didn't want it bad enough that I could like Google it, so it's not really. It's not necessary, is what I'm saying. If you know the information offhand and you're like, oh, I know, and you're like really enthusiastic about that, by all means, treat yourself. But this is not about me.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one term for them. I'm looking it up now, and they're marketed under a couple different names, like magic grow capsules and pop-up sponges. Compressed sponge.
Neither one of those things are what I'm thinking of.
That's fine.
Grow Monsters is the most popular brand, I guess.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's Grow Monsters.
Okay.
But yeah,
I hope you're okay, Austin. I'm not a scientist or anything, but I do know what number comes after the previous number, and apparently the hurricanes go up to 5, and they said this one is a 5+ because they can't go higher than that. I guess it would break the system.
Weird. It's almost like the climate is changing.
I'm not quite certain that they're right about that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but things can always get worse.
Right, I know. I just mean like because they don't want to change the system, they just say 5+ now. I again, not a scientist. I just know what number comes after the next one. So that's why I was like, oh, they said 5+. Is Austin going to drown? Like, what is going to happen? This sounds terrible.
Also, I live right next to a lake. Like, there's a lake in my backyard, almost literally. So I'm trying not to think of that.
You need a raft. You need to buy an inflatable raft just in case.
Okay, I don't know. So I don't want to get into like a bunch of like sad things about people drowning, but like it's a whole thing right now, and I'm living under the assumption that we're more prepared than perhaps Texas was, because Florida is just routinely just dumped on by hurricanes. But also our government is we call our governor Voldemort for multiple reasons. One is he looks like Voldemort, and two is he acts like Voldemort. And I have very little faith that the money that is supposed to be going to hurricane preparedness made it there. So, I don't know.
So explain why you're not worried, then.
You're
like, no big deal. Misappropriation of funds that'll keep me alive.
I mean, partially that's just me and my life philosophy, which is to try not to stress out about things beyond my control. But, I mean, obviously there is a rational basis for worrying. I'm just focusing on other things.
You can swim, right?
Technically.
I'm not saying that you could go toe to toe with Michael Phelps or a shark for that matter. Or like, I don't know, when you go off to like summer camp, you can win that Great Lake race with that snobby neighbor camp across the lake, so that the one girl that goes there that sees your worth won't be like ashamed to kiss you, or you can stay afloat, right? Like, you know how to tread water?
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, at least motivate yourself from one place to another where a thing that floats is.
I'm actually, and I don't mean this, this is going to come off mean, but like, I don't understand how people don't know how to swim, because it feels like a motor reflex that is innate. Like, I don't, like, maybe you guys can enlighten me. Like, if someone threw me in water and I had never been in water before, I think I would move my arms in such a way that I would move.
It's tough to say because I can't remember learning how to swim. I just always could. But that's the thing. Like for example, I can close my eyes right now, and like there's not a keyboard right in front of my figures.
Yeah.
And I can and they'll just sort of do it. And the first time that happened, I was like surprised that this was happening to me. So maybe it's not like it's just something your body knows how to do. Maybe you just learned how to do it.
I wish I could tell you I'm actually a very proficient swimmer, but there are people whose skill in swimming. Like I came like just shy of being able to qualify for like a lifeguard position, essentially. When I was younger, like I took lessons and stuff like that. But there have been times where I've seen people go in water and then somehow stay afloat despite themselves, So
maybe they're buoyant.
Well, but people are, and this is the thing though, is that it's not so much like that people aren't buoyant naturally, because we do tend to float when you like take deep breaths and the water is calm and there is no undercurrent. But when there are like giant waves, or like you step outside your house and something just like whisks you away, it's about being able to keep up with that resistance. Like when you get knocked underwater, how do you tell which way is up? Which I'll give you a hint. It's which way the bubbles go.
Yep.
Yeah, that stuff to me is clearly like more learned behavior, but it's just the more of like, if I threw someone in the water, they would kind of float, and then if they moved their arms or kicked, they would kind of swim, and that's swimming to me. You don't need to be part dolphin as long as you can just kind of go in a direction. That's fine, right?
Yeah, I just doggy paddle.
Yeah. Do you guys want to talk about some stuff?
I could talk about some stuff. There's other stuff that I don't think I could talk about. Yeah. But I think by now, I'm at least reasonably good at bullshitting, so let's give it a try.
Exciting. So, Leon, you start.
Oh, mine's dumb.
Okay, well then, shut up then.
I was thinking today, like, what can I talk about this week? And then I had like two like dumb observations now that I'm like swiping on the dating app we talked about last week. And I realized that although I do have observations that might be comical, I'm also worried that they might fall into like hacky like 80s stand-up comedy about like what women think.
Men
and I was like, oh,
men
God.
swipe like this. Women swipe like this.
Not quite that bad. Just like I've noticed like two commonalities that I was not expecting on people's profiles. But I'm afraid that
are they Hunter S. Thompson quotes? Because I'm in there.
No, I'm afraid like if I phrase this wrong, I'm gonna come across like one of those guys who's like, Steve, the thing about women is, and it's just, I'm gonna try and then.
No, come talk to me about your personal experiences and observations. I wanna hear these in a genuine and non Andrew Dice Clay fashion.
All you have to do is frame them as anecdotes as opposed to broad generalizations. I saw a thing like this, and not like all women do this thing.
I understand that, but it's hard. It's sometimes like, even though if I say that and you guys know that I'm not a big piece of shit, like sometimes nuance is just lost somehow. And sometimes it's my fault, but I'm going to try.
I think we've agonized over it enough to suggest that there is a level of nuance here, so you can go right ahead, and I don't think anybody is going to mistake this for off-the-cuff sexism.
God, Leon, all your virtue signaling.
Such a white knight.
Oh my God! You need to stop. Okay, so the first one is just dumb, and it means nothing. But the second one, I'm genuinely confused and curious. I have noticed two startling commonalities among many, many, many different profiles that I have seen. The first one is that a whole lot of women seem to have a picture of themselves sitting on the Iron Throne. That was not what that's just a very, very common profile picture.
In British Columbia, it's pictures of them being on a mountain somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. I just that threw me a little. I mean, I realize Game of Thrones is very popular, but I just didn't know that everyone was like, I need a picture of myself on the Iron Throne, and also date me.
I think the Florida version is beach. Like, everyone has a picture of them on the beach.
Yeah, probably.
All right. But this can't be colloquial.
No, all are super into Game of Thrones or wherever you are now. That was your last known location.
You had to have been in a place where the Iron Throne was in order to get a picture of you on it, right? So
I don't know. But where are they keeping the Iron Throne these days?
No, it probably at some point in time just moved through the neighborhood, and everybody was like, you know what would make a great dating profile pic? The same one that's like, that lady sits on who likes to fuck her twin brother.
Oh my god. Okay.
I'm sorry, should I have said spoilers?
No, you're fine. So that's like the goofy one where there's no real good answer to that and it's just silly. Here's the one where I'm worried about like making broad generalizations. When you get what I do is I flip right through the pictures and read their profile, like who they are, because the first thing I want to get out of the way is if they don't write anything, I'm done. Because
Leon, I hate to interrupt your flow, but I found the answer to your first thing.
Okay, what is that?
HBO tours several Iron Thrones across the country each year.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not saying that all of these women.
Okay, well, that's what it is. There's like some kind of thing where you can go take a selfie with it, and they went through your area. It's not a mystery. It's the most popular show in the world.
I understand that, but even knowing that it's popular, I'm like, this is like a very specific image that everyone wants to show. And you know what? Like I said, not the important one. This is the thing that
okay. Let's get to the important one.
For me. I go right to the profile because if they don't write anything about themselves, then I can't possibly swipe right on this person. It just does. I don't know what to do there. And usually the descriptions have a lot of commonalities, like, I'm positive, I love life, I love to laugh, nice things that are kind of.
Do you get people who like to go on adventures a lot?
So many adventures.
I know.
I could shit.
That word doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Now I'm like, is that like going to a different grocery store, or
I don't even know, but they're like harmless, and I haven't really, it's a little confusing, but I haven't thought too much about that. Usually they're just harmless stuff like I'm introverted or I'm left leaning or whatever, just things that I, will learn about this person and maybe make me interested. Mm-hmm. One trait that I've just, and I'm not exaggerating here, dozens upon dozens of women who I've scrolled through describe themselves as sarcastic.
I have noticed this too.
Okay, so it's not just like so this is not colloquial.
I was curious about the colloquial. Yeah, if this was like, no, I get it here too.
Okay, so this is okay. Then we can, all right. Then let's make a sweeping, broad generalization about women in both Canada and America. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe this just sort of like means something different that I don't understand. Maybe that's just like another way of saying funny, which is fine if that's what they mean. But does that mean funny but insincere?
I think maybe like a little irreverent, possibly.
Maybe, but I'm struck by it because the way they're phrasing it, and because it is so common, it sounds like they're very clear about the fact that it's a positive.
I don't really get it myself. I don't.
Okay.
I am thrown by it.
If you're a sarcastic woman, write the show.
You guys are you're just so much right now. You know that, right?
Tell me, Austin, what do you know? What do you know about sarcastic women, or women who would define themselves as sarcastic?
It's just they're saying that's the sense of humor. Like when
there
was a period where
sarcasm is not a sense of humor.
That's a style choice.
There's nothing inherently funny about sarcasm. You can have a dry sense of humor.
Yeah, that would be another way to describe it. It's just a generalization. Like there was like 3 or 4 years where everyone on the internet described themselves as snarky. I don't know if we do that anymore, but that was a thing for a while, right? Does anybody else remember that? Am I going insane?
Yes, but like someone like.
That's just the way I say it. People don't say like, "Oh, I'm funny." That sounds arrogant. And if you were like, "Oh, I have very deadpan sense of humor," okay, that's one way. The other way, people would talk about themselves as sarcastic.
That is very specific, though. When someone says, "I'm getting a lot," there are a lot of variants, though. Like I've had a bunch of women say things like, "I am the queen of sarcasm," and things of that nature, and I was like.
They just mean they have a mean sense of humor.
Yeah, well, then say that.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
I'm kind of mean.
And also, this is totally not gender specific. Like a lot of
that's what I'm wondering about. That's
like mask like being mean as like
that's no, I understand.
That's just my comedy stylings, man. Get over it.
But there's a difference between just saying I'm mean and saying I'm sarcastic. That's why I was wondering how gender based this is, because I've never met I've met sarcastic men.
Yeah.
But I've never met a man who says, I'm very sarcastic.
Well, men may have said that before. I think the thing we say now is like, I just tell it like it is.
Yeah, I hate that too.
I mean, that's the way it's all the same thing. What they mean is like, I sometimes say funny things while I'm being mean, and I'm also going to be mean other times, but I don't want you to hold that against me.
That's an interesting insight to this. And also a very good reason for me to swipe left.
There's a couple different ways. Some people are not funny, and they know that. I know people who are just like, no, I'm just not that funny. That's fine. And there's some people who are very funny, but they don't like saying that because that's just we have as a culture like value humility, right? I don't go around telling people like, no, I'm very fun. No, you don't get it. Like I'm hilarious. That would seem really douchey. So I don't know how I would describe myself not sarcastic. I'm trying to go for more of an earnest vibe these days, but there was probably like a mid 2000s period where I would have said snarky. I think that's what we used to call that. And then there's just like mean. There's just like catty. Catty is also a word I think people probably don't use that much anymore, but would have for that kind of humor. But nobody thinks of themselves as like, I'm an unfunny, mean asshole. But they do say, I just tell it like it is. I'm sarcastic, man. Like, that's fine. It's not...
Sarcasm is like the opposite of what it is. You use a sarcastic tone often to say the opposite of... Never mind.
Yeah, but that's not the way people actually employ it.
There's that famous Kids in the Hall sketch. Do you know the one I'm speaking about, where one of the characters has a speech impediment that sounds like he's being sarcastic about everything?
Yeah,
and he goes to a party, and it's like, oh, hey, it's really nice to meet you, and he's like, oh yeah, I really want to talk to you.
No, but sarcasm is one of the things that our culture, like the internet culture, has kind of ruined. To in a sense, because I don't think it's like a technique with no merit, but when everyone's sarcastic, no one's good at it. If that makes any sense.
I'm of maybe the three of us, I think I am probably the most ironic on this show. Because I will occasionally say things that sound as though I'm not actually on my side.
You're definitely the best at it. I dip in there every once in a while, but I get insecure about being misunderstood.
But the thing is, I would not call myself sarcastic, because sarcasm is a tool.
Yeah.
That's like saying, hey, I picked the best running shoes. I don't run, but
unless it's like your gimmick. Unless you're a stand-up and your gimmick is like you're the sarcastic guy, like the way like emo Phillips like had a gimmick or something.
Yeah, but
I'm saying that's
probably you're in charge of directing your entire act. You can work it so that your gimmick is employed pretty consistently. But to just say that like that you employ a tool constantly, I reference TV shows a lot. It's like that's. What am I taking from that? Like, does that mean you're funny? Like, you reference funny TV shows? No, mostly it's ER and Grey's Anatomy. Baffles me. I am confused by it.
Okay. Well, I'm not able, because of the way the app is set up, I'm not really able to, like, scroll through dudes' profiles and see if they also
describe themselves as sarcastic?
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if this was gendered or not. And I understand what Austin is saying. I'm still not convinced that it's not, but I don't know.
It doesn't matter to me if it's gendered, honestly.
Yeah, I know, but
I'm just a little confused by its usage that way. Like, what am I to take from that? What information are you giving me that I can go, yes, thank you?
It's literally what you should take from it is they have a mean sense of humor, and yeah, I think statistically it might be used less by men, but I think that it's a very similar idea that they would try to get across. They probably would just use different words, and that stuff changes over time, right?
Austin?
Like maybe 10 years from now, we'll have a
mean girls.
What? Are you okay, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just wanted to say mean girls.
Yeah.
I was thinking about something like similar earlier this week about how the internet has kind of ruined the concept of like a funny rant. Like there was a time when that was like a useful comedic device. Like you have a character who like loses their cool and just starts yelling, and that could be funny. But that's everyone now, and so like there's no way to get me to click away faster than when you characterize your article as a rant.
Yeah, it's also it also used to be like a character thing where you're like, I'm the funny rant guy, but there's quite a few rants that are sincere in how belligerent they are.
Watch me be unreasonable for 6 minutes. And it's like, no, I don't think so.
Everyone's sarcastic, everyone's ranting, everything's epic. It's meh. I'm gonna try to bring more positivity to this show. Okay. I feel like we're getting negative. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about before I go off on my thing?
That is the most interesting thing that's happened to me all week. I've mostly just been working.
That's a chilling indictment.
No, I mean, I think I saw a couple movies, but nothing that I really need to, go into much. I finished writing my movie, so that's good. So now I just have to do I have to just, record it and animate it, really, which is terrible. So, there's that.
That's still a milestone. That's something to be proud of. There are a lot of people out there who I'm sure have never finished writing their screenplay.
Oh, I know that to be true.
Excuse me.
Oh,
I lost it. I don't know where it is right now. That kind of depresses me. I think it vanished.
Yeah.
Oh no! Wait, there it is. No, I'm kidding. I did lose it. I honestly have no clue where it is. I'm sure if I deep dove into data backups and things like that, I could find it. But right now, it's just I have no clue where it is.
I stumbled upon a half-finished novel of mine the other day, and man, is it bad! It's so bad. Oh, it's like why did I think this was even remotely good at the time?
Because you just saw Fight Club and you were like, yeah, skeleton memes.
No, it's I don't know. I'm Austin. You probably have so many things as you usually do. So I will shut up now and stop talking about that and take it away.
Okay, I'm not sure if that was shade there.
No. I'm saying you frequently have multiple topics, whereas my life is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, is kind of samey. And that's fine.
I like to think of it that Austin is young enough to have differing interests.
Ooh,
it's like I remember those days when I had energy.
Yes, Austin's experiences have an earlier freshness date to them, so there's that.
I don't know that I would characterize myself as having any particular energy. I often feel like I'm dying these days, but a lot of things are happening at me while I'm dying. Most notably, school started up again, so I'm taking classes, some of which are interesting, some of which are not. I don't think I'm going to be telling any cool stories on this show about my tax class. Do you guys want to know about earned income credits? No.
No.
I'm thinking.
Okay. The other classes I'm taking are evidence, which you'd think would have some cool stories, but so far it's just been kind of like a lot of reading rules and stuff. Although I have seen crime scene photos that I can never unsee now. If you're curious how long it took to get to the mutilated bodies in law school, it's 2 years. The very beginning of the second one is the answer to that question.
Damn.
I'm also taking, this is the fun one, animal law. So I hope to be suing all of your dogs very soon.
Joke's on you. I don't have a dog.
Well, I'll give you one once I sue for custody of everyone else's dogs.
Well, then
I will
you'll
control
also
the
have
dogs.
to give me, like, its evidence log so I know where this dog has been so you can't sue it. I'm on to you, Austin.
And the last one I'm taking is like sales and transactions. Once again, I don't think there's going to be any cool stories coming out of that necessarily. I think it's going to be a lot of animal law this semester as far as word funk is concerned. So that class, apparently, animal law is distinct from animal rights law. Like, you think they're kind of interchangeable and synonymous. Apparently not. Animal rights is like its own very specialized thing, and animal law is kind of a broader, like, when a statute says, like, you can't give out animals as prizes at carnivals.
Right.
Like, what does animal mean in that context?
Or how many tigers is acceptable to take to elementary school with you?
Well, no, because maybe, but tigers doesn't really require interpretation. The question is when someone says animal, what do they mean, legally speaking? And it's not always obvious.
Right.
So like there's laws.
All right. What about can I open an insect restaurant? Huh?
What's in it? Does that mean you can have spiders? Are they insects? I mean, no,
they're not.
Not taxonomically, which is hopefully a word, but maybe according to the statute, it would be.
Like, eat a bunch of grasshoppers. Now give me money.
Okay. Which is, of course, our inevitable future. But Leon?
So when they said, like, when it says animal, what does that mean? Does that mean, like, does it exclude exotic animals and stuff like that? Like,
that's one issue, but like the one that's most obvious to me, like it's also one that like the book starts with. Also, our textbook is written by someone named Wagman, which I very much enjoyed.
I really, for some reason, my first thought there would be, wouldn't it be great if their first name was Dance? Dance Wagman.
Anyway, the thing that I was talking, so there was a statute which was that if a dog like seriously injures another animal, it can be put down, right? That seems like a pretty obvious law. So like, but the way it was worded, it did not appear to include other dogs because it was written in such a way as to protect like farm animals, like cows,
right? Because
that's the people who lobbied for the law were like ranchers who didn't want their cows getting attacked by dogs or whatever.
Right.
And so like they had this, like there's a lawsuit where people argued that dogs aren't animals legally according to the statute. And there's a bunch of weird shit like that where you'd think it'd be obvious. Another one was like goldfish. There was a case where there was an art installation where someone put goldfish in blenders, and that was the whole art exhibit. And someone who was viewing the art exhibit turned them on because they were plugged in with predictable results. And then there was like, is that animal cruelty? Are goldfish animals? Like, you'd think, once again, it should be obvious, but legally it's actually not. And I talked before about like the monkey selfie case, Naruto and stuff. And there's all those kind of fun issues about like how smart do apes have to be before they can own property or something like that. And because that's the excuse a lot of people say is like, well, animals aren't like people. They can't reason or, pay taxes. So they can't, have self-determination. But like, what if they could?
That's a legal matter, though, more and not a moral matter. I mean, you can say that our laws only extend to human beings because that's what the law says. But
because we're all complicit in the law, we actually have the ability to say, yes, that should be a rule, and now I'm going to break it.
But, I mean, who decides what the law says, right? If you actually read the court cases, it'll be like, as everyone knows, the Bible says that humans have dominion over animals. Therefore, that is not a joke or an exaggeration. That's literally what a foundational court case opinion says.
I'm aware that these systems perpetuate each other, You know, I'm not saying there was like a definitive one point in time where we all got together and we're like, "Hey, dogs aren't animals, right?" You know, okay, good, we've decided that. Next, like it's something built upon something that's built upon something that's built upon something else. I'm aware of this.
Well, and it's also, like, you don't really think about it like this, but I think it's pretty clear once you back up and you realize what has counted as human throughout history has changed. Like,
oh yeah,
hey, slavery.
Yeah.
Read what people wrote about it at the time. People actually said with a straight face and total sincerity, well, they're not really human. They were given to us by God to do work, so it's fine. They're property. Dred Scott, famously, the Supreme Court case, said that, African Americans don't have rights because they're not people. With written, like, that's, I don't know if our non-American listeners really appreciate how, like, very much taken for granted that kind of opinion was. Like, Supreme Court justices said that earnestly and truly, like, as if they believed it in their hearts.
And a lot of people read it in the newspaper and said, of course.
Yeah, and also, like, women were their father's property until they got married, and then they were their husband's property. And property is not personhood. Those are distinct categories. You can't be both. So, like, there's, you know what I'm saying? Like, once you go down the rabbit hole of, like, what is a person legally? Corporations, yes. Women, for most of history, no.
Although, in fairness, corporations for most of history also no.
True. But I'm saying our values change over time, and so personhood changes over time.
Yeah.
It's basically where that kind of thing is going. So, yeah, I think this is probably going to be the most interesting course to talk about on here as I read wacky lawsuits about what is not considered an animal in what context, and all the wacky excuses people come up with to try to get away with being just total assholes.
Can you?
Because that's what it comes down to.
Can you do me a favor and ask your professor if animal is considered an animal? I'm of course talking about the Muppet that drums for.
Yeah, I saw that coming.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Thank you, Johnny.
Okay.
Also, on the first day of class, we had to fill out like index cards with like basic like contact information and stuff, and a couple of random questions. One of which was, "Why are you taking this class?" And I wrote down, "I think dogs should vote," which is a quote from a Monster Factory video. Shout out.
I thought you were talking about granting moral authority to animals.
Listen,
which I know you're kind of joking, but that is an actual philosophical standpoint by
humans had a shot at democracy, right? Like, we tried it and we fucked it up. It can't get any worse. Like, let's let them try it. You can't argue against that because it's good logic.
It's the best logic. I mean. Jesus. Okay.
But there is like, you joke about like the giving dogs the rights to vote or something. Like, there are people who believe that animals have the same rights as humans, and then there are a subset of those who believe they have more rights, and that's considered kind of like an extremist fringe view. But like, I'm open to being persuaded at this point, frankly. Like, I'm gonna listen.
Yeah. When I say that granting moral rights to animals is a philosophical standpoint, it doesn't necessarily mean like cats can vote so much as it is they have to be treated much in the same way as non-human animals, as some philosophers like Peter Singer and Tom Regan would say.
Yeah, non-human animals is the technical term.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, as far as giving animals rights, I do think, I think I've come out on this show pretty strongly against people, civilians, that is, just owning guns. But I do feel strongly that cats should be able to own guns, because you know that when they go to pull the trigger, they really mean it. Because they don't care about so many things, that the effort it takes for them to learn how to use and go through with actually using it. I would trust that judgment more than a person. Does that make sense?
No.
I mean, the real answer is no. But okay.
I just think cats should have guns. I'm just out here just telling them I'm speaking my truth.
I just sort of feel like a cat would be like, I'm going to learn how to shoot this thing. And if you asked it why, it'd be like, just fucking around.
Yeah. If I like never mind. I was going to try to answer this seriously, and then I was like, nah, I don't want to.
I'm sorry if I offended you, Leon.
No. What I'm trying to say is, like, if I were to answer this seriously, I would say that a cat cannot own a gun for the same reason that a lot of people should not be allowed to purchase firearms. But that's like me being boring and not playing along with your scenario. Sorry.
Fun. I have other things, but Johnny, you want to jump in here now?
I don't have a whole lot this week. I started watching Death Note. I watched the movie. I watched the live action movie because I was like, I gotta see this, just to see what the problem is.
I saw your Twitter thing.
Yeah, and then afterwards I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and watch the anime, and I'm not done it yet, but early results are not good. I will resolve to speak about it after I'm done watching the whole thing, but it's I
think you have to at least grant it that you would have been into it in middle school.
Yeah, I can completely see that if I had jumped right onto Death Note after I thought that Neon Genesis Evangelion was the deepest thing I'd ever seen in my life, then I would be like, yeah, okay, all right, sure, let's get on with this. But there are some things about it, not a fan. I am gonna finish it though because I think I owe it at least that. It's an interesting enough concept, and it's oddly super cultural in a way that, weirdly enough, like not a lot of anime is to me these days. Like it's super Japanese, in like a lot of its themes and structure and characters and things like that. So I owe it enough to finish it. It's not very long anyways, but I'm like at episode 14 or something like that right now, and so we'll get to that. What else did I do this week? I got sick over the weekend, so I didn't have a whole lot going on over the weekend because I was mostly just sticking to my bedclothes. Some new music came out this week that I've been listening to. There's the new LCD Sound System album that released, as well as Mogwai's new album. I've managed to listen to each of them a couple of times. The Mogwai one is to be expected. If you like what Mogwai does, then fucking get this album. It's just they're honing their craft as they have been seemingly for the past 20 years. But after the first listen, I was like, you know what, I think I should probably finally see these guys live, because I've been a fan of Mogwai's for like 20 years now practically, and I've never seen them live. So I went and got myself a ticket. They're coming to play Vancouver on November blah 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 blah. So I'm gonna go to that by myself because that's what I do now. And, but the LCD Sound System album is weird. Like, I mean, James Murphy gave it up. Like, he gave LCD Sound System up, oh geez, when was it? Like, I want to say like 10 years ago or something. Less than that. 7. It was like 7 years ago or something. And he was like, I'm retiring, and everybody was like, why? And he's like, 'cause I'm retiring. I'm getting old, like he was already like in his 40s, I think, when the debut album came out, and he just couldn't take the touring anymore, and okay, like, sure, you go ahead and do what you want to do. Like most musicians that I know who have given the choice to like give up pursuing music in any kind of serious fashion, you oftentimes can't stop playing or writing. I mean, you stop giving up shows, but you still, like, put music together. I imagine that would be, like, tenfold more difficult to do if you were doing music for a living. And then one day you're like, okay, I'm done. time to watch the Harry Potter movies, I guess. So, like, he's been writing music for like the past 7 years, just doing his thing. I sort of feel like this is not like the Lost LCD Sound System album, but like the third Lost LCD Sound System album. Like, there's 2 albums that he wrote in the past 7 years that we just missed, and he's like, here's my third one, it's out, you know? Because it feels his sound has developed more than just spending 7 years to write the next album. You know, the closest corollary that I can think of is Modest Mouse and their work, how you get so many years to be like, okay, you know, what was it called? Strangers as People or something?
Strangers to Ourselves?
Strangers to Ourselves, thank you. I never remember the names of songs or albums like I used to anymore. I only remember, like, track numbers, and the album art looks like this.
Also, Modest Mouse has the weirdest album titles ever.
Yes, yeah, that too. So, you know, like, both of those albums, American Dream, LCD Sound System's American Dream, and Strangers to Ourselves, have this, like, weird, unique position where you've had, like, over half a decade to get your shit together on, like, the next thing that you want to make. And it's strange to think about how that came about to being complete. Like, how long was it incomplete? How long was it in the process of editing? What hit the cutting room floor? You know, what did we miss? Like, at what point in time, it wasn't even chronological. Was it like he had wrote like 26 songs, and on the 27th song, he was like, holy shit, I need to publish some of this. And like, that was when the album started. Or did he just have this collection of like 50 songs that were all just sitting there, and he was like, well, I could probably do something with this. You know, like, there's no way for me to know at this point in time. So yeah, it's American Dream is weird because it doesn't sound like the same LCD sound system that we kind of went out on. There are a bunch of like James Murphy songs on it that just sound like he's jamming in his basement on a sad day. And then there's other ones that sound like he's decided to double the size of the band and just like go for it, you know? Like it's really out there, but there's a couple of really catchy tracks. A lot of my favorite LCD sound systems are his slightly more melancholic, introspective kind of tracks, like, you know, Someone Great, or what's that it's not Your City's a Sucker. Was it I Was There? Where he's just talking about, like, all of these, like, trends that he saw come and go. But he's like, yeah, you know, I hear that you and your band want to sell all your guitars and buy keyboards and make a synth pop band. I hear that you and your band want to sell your keyboards and buy acoustic guitars because you want to make something real. I hear that you and your band, like, it's just this really... But there's a couple of tracks on American Dream that are kind of like that are really... Like, he takes his time, and you can tell that there's something personal in it. And I'm finding myself wondering, like, okay, why did you write this song? You know, because previously it's really easy to say that, oh yeah, well, the next record came out because James Murphy is a musician, because, you know, he writes music for a living. That's what he does. But he hasn't decided he was going to do this for like 6 years or something. So there's probably a bunch of songs on this album that were written for like very different reasons than, well, I've got to put another album out. So I don't know. It's disjointed and strange, and I kind of like it, but I'm not completely, like, ready on it yet. So, we'll see. But yes, Mogwai album. Great, love him.
It's been a pretty wild time for music. The Fleet Foxes, Arcade Fire, Mastodon has a new EP, Queens of the Stone Age. Like it's popping out there.
And the new National album drops on Friday. Don't think that I'm not just waiting for that, because
as the singles come out, I've been thinking to myself, like, every time I see a new one pop up, I'm like, oh, I bet this is gonna be pretty good. And like I have like okay expectations, and they keep getting blown away, and so that's really great for me.
Yeah,
because I don't know why, but I'm not expecting them all to be barn burners, and they are.
The latest one that they released, "The Day I Die," is one of the catchiest songs they've ever written. Like even when I'm listening to these other albums that I bought, I'm like walking around at work going, I don't need you. In fact, I barely even see you anymore. Because it just, it drives. I like that. One of the things that I just love about the National is how important the drumming has always kind of played a part in their music. It's always a driving force, practically.
Yeah,
so
they write their songs in like a kind of backwards way. I'm trying to remember where I read this, but it's basically like it's the music and then the lyrics. That's why they seem so like dreamlike and disconnected and like meaningless often, because they are almost like a different instrument. And like the drums are way more prominent than a lot of, bands in their genre, because they've kind of built the song in reverse from like the priorities of a quote unquote rock band. They have a very interesting sound.
The Dessners are like phenomenal composers, just like, and I'm not even talking just about the National, but the work that some of the symphonic work that Bryce Dessner has done, as well as his work on Planetarium with Sufjan Stevens and oh no, Sufjan Stevens and Nico Mulley and James McAllister. Got it.
Last music thing before Leon rips his own head off and jumps into a lake. I was listening to like a shuffled like internet radio station, and a song I had never heard came on, and I was listening to it. I was like, damn, this is a banger. And the singer sounds so much like Matt Berninger from The National.
Were you listening to Elvi?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that album.
Yeah. Okay. I love when me and Johnny are on the same page. I didn't know he had another band.
Yeah,
the National has another band called Elvi.
That's one of the guys from they're a Portland band. God, I even own some of their fucking shit, and I can't.
Google's telling me the other member of Elvi is Brent Knopf, founding member of Ramona Falls.
No, that's not the one I'm thinking of.
Menomina.
Yeah, Menomina.
Oh, shit. Okay. Cool. Bands. Music. Sorry, Leon. You still around?
That's okay.
That's okay. I keep trying to prove to Leon that he does like music. He just doesn't take an interest in it.
Everyone knows Leon's secretly standing for the new Taylor Swift track, obviously.
It's fine, actually.
Her new song, are you kidding? I can't tell if you're serious. Everyone agrees it's the worst thing ever.
I'm fine with it, actually.
Jesus.
I have not heard it.
I'm okay. Like, I listened to it, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I prefer this over, like, the bubblegum kind of pop that she used to do.
Holy shit. You've inadvertently walked backwards into the hottest take in word funk history.
I don't care enough. I don't care enough to defend it. I just listened to it, and I'm like, wow, you must really hate Kanye West. I mean, it's like, okay, neat, I guess. Then I learned it, and then I looked up why, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. While you guys were talking about music, I learned 3 things. One is that Tom Regan, one of the philosophers I mentioned earlier, actually died earlier this year. I did not know that, so rest in peace to him. The second thing I learned was that one of my favorite directors ever, Agnes Varda, is getting an honorary Oscar at the upcoming Academy Awards, so that's neat also. And the third thing I learned is that I found Gorfanax in real life. For those who are not aware of this, canonically speaking, Gorfanax looks like, I'm going to put it into the Skype, looks like this, because one of the great artists who follow both of our podcasts drew Gorfanax as such, and in my mind, that's just what he looks like.
Yeah, that's Becky, the artist who drew Gorfanax. For listeners who can't see, it's like a baby's head with spider legs, and also its tongue has eyeballs on it. It's absolutely disturbing.
And it's wearing a Pope hat.
It's it's like amazingly good. And this, I just found, is Gorfanax in real life. I didn't expect to see this today, but so it's actually a hermit crab. But the legs are very similar, and the baby head is there, and the dead eyes. So it's like, this is as close as we're gonna get.
Yeah, gross.
So that was neat. I don't know how well this will translate to audio, but maybe I'll try to find a way. Anyway,
I hate it. If you make it a landscape, maybe you can make it the title card.
It's too disturbing though. It's so gross that I'm not sure I could make it. It's like icky. I don't know.
It's really just a picture of a crab and part of a toy.
I know. It's just there's something foul about it. I'm not sure.
Cursed image.
Do you have more to talk about there, Austin? Because I tried to get that music stuff off quick, but I did ramble a bit about LCD sound system. So if you've got more stuff,
let's see. We're at almost an hour, so we do want to get into questions quick. I had an interesting confluence of law and one of my other interests. I'm going to try to involve you in this if you guys want to get into it. But
I like being involved.
I can get it. I can get into it.
Hot. All right, so this is going to sound like the most antithetical thing to your lifestyle ever, Leon, but I promise I'll try to make it accessible.
Okay.
So there's a legal concept, and I could try to explain it in technical terms, but I think it'd be easier to use an example. So here's a court case for your consideration. This lady and her husband both work for a company. They're big earners. It's a financial institution. The details aren't really important, but they're both worth a lot of money. The husband gets scouted, basically like headhunted by another company who brings him on, and it's a rival to the company they both used to work at. So the wife goes to the CEO of the company she still works for and her husband used to, and says like, hey, is it going to be a problem that my husband left? For our rival corporation, I don't want it to be awkward or whatever. And the CEO says, don't worry about it. Just continue what you're doing. Everything's fine. And then a week later, she gets fired. So she sues them, basically for
wrongful termination.
Well, assume it's a right to work state.
Oh, okay.
Where you can be fired at any time. Do you think there's anything do you think she's entitled to any money? That this is the simplest kind of distillation of the concept.
I feel like it's wrongful termination. I mean, because she has been terminated without any wrongdoing on her part or neglect or.
We are assuming that, right? We're assuming that she didn't.
Yeah.
Can we assume that
the assumption?
That she hasn't done anything wrong, and that it's a right to work state, which means you can be fired at any time for no reason.
What?
Well, yeah, that's apparently a thing. But what I'm trying to say is that okay, just with that out of the way. I still feel like there's a chance that she might be able to get something if she can prove that there was no. I keep trying to say.
You might have to explain this right to work thing to me.
It's like an anti-union law that some states have because they don't want employees having any power at all in our capitalist society, and therefore there are states in which you can be fired without cause.
And they call this law.
Yeah, it's has an Orwellian title.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just branding. It's like calling something the Patriot Act.
There's a lot of freedom and American Justice Act, and the thing it actually does is kill orphans.
I know. I'm sorry. That just completely rearranged some part of my brain where it was you can just get fired from a job for no reason.
I mean, the bigger the actual term for the specific thing is at will employment. Which is that you are serving at the pleasure of the company. They're doing it out of the kindness of their heart, and you can be fired without just cause.
But if let's say you get solicited for sex by someone who's your superior,
My God.
And then you're like, no, thank you. And they're like, oh, okay, cool, no problem. And then they fire you a week later. That's just kosher?
No, I mean, in a case like that, I would think that even though you couldn't sue for wrongful termination in a right-to-work state, you could still press charges because harassment itself is
yeah, so you could press charges for harassment, but not for the loss of your job.
That is my understanding. Yes. Austin, deep down in my, I want to say that because there is no proof that she could possibly have done anything wrong, that she might have been able to get something, but the other part of me thinks, no. I don't see why, if the people who made this law and are forced to enforce it would make an exception in that case, unless there was something, she had like a contract that had very specific things that said this, that, and the other. But
yeah,
I
just heard about this thing, and already I'm like, nah, she's fucked.
No, okay, so we're getting sidetracked because all the details that I told in the story were the only relevant ones, and then we got off on another tangent because you guys were trying to consider outside forces. Mm-hmm. Like the actual story was all the details are in there, so don't try to to solve the puzzle. You don't need any of this other knowledge about at-will employment.
I'm sorry, but one of the details that you were in was like, yeah, it's a right-to-work state, and I'm like, sorry.
No, that was Leon asked about wrongful termination, and I was just trying to give guidelines.
I would, if it is in fact that, I would just my first guess would that be that she's screwed. Mm-hmm. But I would really love for there to be a twist where she's not. So I remain hopeful.
If she was let go, like meeting all the legal standards. Because I don't know about you guys in America, but we have like certain laws in Canada of where, if you've been employed for this long, then you are entitled to a severance of this, unless you're fired for like specific like reasons of illegal activity or something like that, or a breach of contract with the employer and things like that. So if somebody lets you go and they can just say, sorry, you're fired, they have to like do it a certain way. So assuming that was done and that it wasn't just like, fuck you, get out, your husband's a traitor, then no, I don't believe she's entitled to anything legally. And I want to make that distinction that when I said the word legally, I looked up at the ceiling with both my eyes in a very specific impression that sounded like I was looking up at the ceiling and saying legally.
Would you say it was sarcastic kind of humor?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. There was a little bit of. I would say there's a little bit of irony involved in there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, I don't think that the CEO fired her for revenge so much as it is a security matter for them, because now the competitor, the competitor and their employee, the woman, are married, and like information could be transmitted. Yeah, I would think that is why they did it.
Leon, I'm spying on you right now. Don't tell anybody.
All right, I gotta move this along.
Please do. Go ahead.
Okay, so you both said that she's screwed and doesn't get any money. Nope, you both are wrong.
Yeah, excellent.
But it's not for all the reasons you think. So
Okay.
Leon, you tried to say about like whether or not she was fired properly or legally, like through the proper channels. What are the right to work laws? I actually, while you guys were talking, looked up. Here's a quote from the Supreme Court of California. An employer may terminate its employees at will for any reason or no reason. The employer may act preemptorily, arbitrarily, inconsistently, and without providing any specific protections or prior warnings. You just straight up don't need a reason in some states. There's just no protections at all.
Okay.
And the problem was, in this case, is that she went to the CEO and said, "Is everything kosher?" And he said, "Everything's fine. Keep doing what you're doing." And that was a lie. Because everything was not fine, and she should have not kept doing what she was doing. She should have been looking for other work. And so she was entitled to damages stemming from monetary losses she sustained by not looking for other work.
Okay, that makes sense.
So literally the only important detail...
So that they had that meeting.
Was the meet, exactly. So this is a legal doctrine known as promissory estoppel, which is a fancy word for saying, like, lies that with consequences, because in our normal day-to-day life, you can like lie basically with no consequences except social, right? Like if I say, Johnny, like, I'm 8 feet tall, like that's a lie, but he can't take me to court, right? There's no meaningful consequences to that thing. But under the law,
Austin,
if you lie to someone,
I was just drafting you for my basketball team.
Listen, I can still sick a sick 3, even at my measly 6'4" height. So if you lie to someone and that person reasonably relies on that lie to their financial detriment, they can recover damages. So like, it's a very specific instance. It doesn't cover all lies, but if it's reasonable to believe them, and you act in such a way on that knowledge as to cause yourself harm, you can recover.
So if the boss had even said, we're considering our options, we'll get back to you.
Which is what his legal team probably would have advised him to say if he had asked them. Yeah, that's absolutely why you shouldn't commit to anything.
Look, heartless corporations, you're hiring the wrong people.
That should have went through HR. Probably the reason it didn't is because she was such a valuable, like, big shot earner that she could just walk into the head honcho's office and talk to him in a way that a normal employee probably couldn't.
Right.
But the reason I bring all of this up is because it's a pretty simple concept that takes a little bit to explain, but it's also important to the thing I really want to talk about, which is, drumroll please, Magic the Gathering.
I like it.
Sorry.
This is a saucy transition.
It's an amazing transition.
Take me places, Austin.
So one of the biggest controversies in the Magic the Gathering community is something known as the reserved list. Do you guys know about the reserved list?
No.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
I'm already looking at my Tumblr.
Oh God, I've killed him. Okay, I promise. This isn't gonna be like bogged down in garbage you don't care about. It's just background dressing. Okay. So cards, like trading card games, are built on an elaborate legal fiction, which is that they are not gambling when clearly they are, right? When you go to buy cards, whether it's Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, baseball, you buy a pack and you open it and there are random cards inside that you paid money for, which by almost any layman's definition is gambling, paying money for an uncertain outcome. But the reason it's not governed by gambling laws and why children can buy packs of trading cards is because of the legal fiction that these companies operate under, which is they say the value of any given card is its percentage of the pack. So if you buy a pack and there's 10 cards, every card in there is worth 1/10 of the retail price. Does that make sense?
It is.
And it's totally not. If you open up a Magic the Gathering pack and you pull a Black Lotus, that's worth $30,000.
Somebody will slap you, probably.
You will get, if anybody around you knows what it's worth, you will get mugged to death instantly. But if you ask Wizards of the Coast, they say that no card has particular value, even though there is a thriving secondary market. There are, speculators, people who make their entire career on buying and selling these things because they have secondary market value for speculators and professional players and stuff. So this entire thing is like a house of cards that's lasted for like house of cards. It's like the invention of trading cards, where it's also creeping into video games. You guys are probably familiar with Overwatch, which has loot boxes you earn by playing the game.
Yeah.
And you get a random assortment of in-game items, and you can buy those boxes with real money, which is almost certainly gambling.
Even more acutely, I think the CSGO controversy would probably encapsulate it, where, yes, you pay money to unlock boxes and get things, and then you can take your things and gamble with them. Or you could, at least.
And China is actually kind of leading the way on kind of cracking down on this stuff. They had some laws where you have to be honest about the percent chance of getting certain things, which is why I play Fire Emblem on my phone. It's like you have a 3% chance of getting a Roy or whatever, and that's because of those laws. But here's the important thing about all of this is that these companies are only allowed to exist because they pretend they don't know that these things have value outside of the cardboard they're printed on.
As long as they ignore those gray markets, then...
Absolutely. The problem is, early in Magic the Gathering's history, they knew people were speculating. They knew people were collecting these things, hoping they'd become valuable. Like everyone knows the Superman issue 1 Action Comics is, super valuable. So people were buying up all these old cards, and they wanted to protect that investment, right? If you're someone who spent a bunch of money on early Magic cards, you don't want Wizards of the Coast reprinting them in a new set because the value of the stuff you have will tank. Right? Supply and demand. So they foolishly promised to never reprint a certain group of cards called the reserve list. Now, one of the hottest like controversies in the Magic community, and it comes up like every couple months, the same way like video games, we always have the like used games argument or the microtransactions argument. The Magic equivalent is, should we get rid of the reserved list? Should they reprint, the Moxen or the dual lands or whatever? Which, I mean, there are reasons why we want those cards. They're good. But if they do that, they're breaking the reserve list promise, and that may trigger promissory estoppel, because if you bought a bunch of those cards because you were promised they wouldn't be reprinted and you reasonably relied on that promise to your financial detriment, when the bottom falls out of the market, you could presumably sue Wizards for those damages.
Right.
Now, there's no easy answer to this because it's never been tested in court. There's no precedent for a trading card company being taken to court over this. If I was like Wizards legal team, I would just say don't chance it, because probably best case scenario is we settle for very little, of the percentage, but still it's just not worth the PR hit in addition to like the monetary loss. But do you guys have any sense of any of this stuff legally, like just trading cards in general, or like what, like, do you guys think that a bunch of nerds could sue one of the biggest gaming? I mean, they're owned by Hasbro, which owns Transformers and My Little Pony and, Dungeons and Dragons. Do you think they would just get, like, random collector nerds would get crushed by this corporation? Do you have any sense of any of this?
Does intrinsic value versus extrinsic value ever come up in law? Because that's how I know the thing that you were talking about in my realm.
So you're saying like the intrinsic value of a playing card is cardboard and ink, and the extrinsic value is this card is played at a lot of big tournaments and was only ever made once in the early 90s, and therefore it's very valuable.
Extrinsic value meaning value as it relates to something else. Yes.
Yeah, that's the heart of it. A lot of cards are only valuable because they're used.
I know that from the things that I know about, not law. So I'm trying to use my knowledge of other things to understand this one. Okay.
I feel like that it's something that Wizards of the Coast wouldn't want to scratch. Like they wouldn't want to try that because almost invariably the secondary market would be brought up. Yeah, and that is almost exactly what killed like CSGO skin gambling, was that everybody was just kind of letting it go. And then a couple of like YouTube guys got busted for not like disclosing that they owned gambling websites and promoting them as though they didn't own these gambling websites. So then like advertising laws jumped in and consumer rights groups jumped in, and suddenly it was like, oh my god, like kids are gambling. And Valve jumped at that immediately and shut it down. So that would mean that, more or less, that if Wizards of the Coast were to take these people to court, they would run the risk of legal investigation into the secondary market and discover that kids are really gambling.
I feel like the major difference between this and the woman in the corporation thing is that the promissory thing, where how do I put this? The CEO and her have an understanding about what her job is worth and how much money she makes, whereas Wizards of the Coast and their fans do not agree on do not publicly agree on the worth of the cards. They say these are worth the almost nothing cardboard crap.
Yeah, but the thing is, the company can't jump in and tell secondary markets what. Like, I can't. if I decide to sell my apartment, the architect can't walk in and say, no, this is how much money your apartment is worth. Like, the market will dictate its worth once it passes to the hands of the consumer. You know, like secondhand cars and shit like that. Like, these markets are real things. So Wizards of the Coast can't just close their eyes and like plug their ears and go, no, it's only worth 1/10 of $5.
But here's the fucked up thing: is they actually, while they can't publicly acknowledge it, it absolutely goes into their calculations. Like, they do sets called like Modern Masters. We're going to reprint a bunch of cards that are legal in the modern format, and they just so happen to be very valuable cards that control the supply in such a sense that they don't spike in price. It's a coincidence.
I get that they play this game because this is obviously them pandering to their customer base completely. But what I'm saying is that once you lift up the rock and look at the worms underneath, the legal system will not side with Wizards of the Coast and say, oh, yeah, absolutely. You're right. Every one of your cards is worth 1/10 of a pack, because that is just... Oh, that is like the worst thing that could happen to their business.
Well, yeah, which is why I think their high-powered legal team could conceivably win by making an argument like, oh, it wasn't reasonable to rely on the reserve list. Like, that was, a marketing stunt. You were foolish to believe it, or something like that. Maybe that's not the exact argument they make, but there's enough legal brawn there.
I suppose it would depend on it, like, exactly sort of like the nature of the statement and, to whom it was made. Because if you make a statement back in 1990 or something that you're not going to reprint the reserve list, but then somebody gets all their shit together in 2005 and spends an extra amount of money collecting the reserve list, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, but you were not a part of that implicit market promise back in 1990.
But I think you're right, Johnny, in identifying that the biggest problem is that you pick up the rock and people see what's under it, and you can't pretend anymore that it's not there.
Yeah.
Even if they win, or even if they settle for a really low amount, I think that the lasting damage is too much. Even though, like, you could argue there's like other legal arguments, but I just don't think it's worth taking that risk. And I'm like looking at the reserve list now, and it's like, wow, I'd really like some of these. Tundra, especially, is a dual land that I would be great in all of my decks. I really like a Tundra, please. But it's not worth it.
No,
this whole thing.
It's not, because you're like, it doesn't matter what the fans think of your game as long as they keep buying the cards, right? The moment that you put a wedge between yourself and the fans and like bring a legal team in, or at least a legal transaction between a plaintiff and defendant, then a whole bunch of shit floats to the top that ruins everybody's hot tub.
Very colorful metaphors. Anyway,
that one just kind of happened. I'm sorry about that one.
No, that's good.
Right.
I could go on. I think it's a super interesting subject, both legally and like as a game. I mean, Magic's basically a sport at this point.
I totally agree with you that they could win it, but yeah, it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, this whole thing is, it's so precarious, and it's terrifying to imagine being in a situation where you're in control of a multi-million, if not billion-dollar industry, and knowing at any time if someone actually checked, you'd be fucked.
Well, because the thing is that the fans would have to argue that these cards have real extra market value.
I mean, there's entire like Reddits and sites dedicated to it's a stock market basically. There's There's like finance sites.
They would be shitting their own bed because they'd be saying, oh my god, like you fucked us on the reserve list and now my cards are worth nothing, so guess what? None of your cards are worth anything anymore. And that sounds like exactly the kind of I'm gonna stick my dick in the mashed potatoes party that, like... slighted nerds would be like, I'm gonna burn the whole fucking house down now. Nobody can have a good time.
I do like instead of saying take my ball and go home, I'm definitely gonna say stick my dick in the mashed potatoes from now on. We've upgraded that colloquialism.
Sure. Are you guys ready to do questions?
Yeah,
because we probably have lots and we have so little time.
Okay.
Well, I knew beforehand because I see them as they come in. Most of the questions are just people asking about the hurricane, and we talked about that for like the first 15 minutes. So we're mostly good. Thank you everybody for your well wishes. And
when does it do landfall?
It's going to hit Florida in the next couple of days. I'm in North Florida though, so it's gonna. I mean, a little I've seen the spaghetti.
All right. Good luck, sir.
Yeah. Worst comes to worst, we'll build a raft, then we'll find the new world. It'll work out. Boop, 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 boop.
I hear that if you sail for long enough, then you can say you discovered it, even if there are people already living there.
Social commentary.
It is.
Okay, Cyretha asks, Leon, is it easier or harder to do a Renegade cut on a subtitled film than an English one?
Oh, great question. The only major complication with a subtitled film is that when I get the file, it's the subtitles are not like hard coded, so I have to if I want to show a scene from the movie with like the sound on, which I occasionally do, and I have to write in the subtitles myself. Like so that other people can see them, and on like a Blu-ray, you click a button, but on my editor, it doesn't work that way. So it's mildly more difficult, but that is the only major complication.
So harder is the answer.
Yeah, it is, but not so much that it deters me from doing it. That's not it does not take long for me to type. I just have to click the text button in my editor, and then I have to figure out what font would be best, and then I have to type it in, and then I have to do like
Comic Sans.
Yeah, Bergman's first choice.
There's a few other buttons to press, but really it's not a big deal.
All right, next question. Josh Irwin asks, Austin, has law school changed your thoughts on media portraying the law? My Cousin Vinny or Ace Attorney, for example. I love this question because I have seen nearly every court scene in My Cousin Vinny in at least one law class. Law school loves My Cousin Vinny. They can't get enough of it. Apparently, it's super accurate, and it displays a bunch of very important foundational theories and stuff that are easy to absorb from it. It's like the pet film of the law school. They adore My Cousin Vinny. It's a very good film, but it's funny to think that most things get it super wrong, and My Cousin Vinny is not one of them. Ace Attorney is also the opposite, because it's not only is it based on the Japanese law system, which is very different, it's also like a post-apocalyptic kangaroo court version. Ace Attorney is wild. Magic exists in that world. It's nonsense and not applicable or helpful at all. So I love Ace Attorney. It's just not law. I assume you guys like My Cousin Vinny.
I do, actually.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, and it's also accurate. Dead on balls accurate.
One of Joe Pesci's only sympathetic roles, I find.
Yeah. Huh. And the Karate Kid's in it, so that's good.
Yeah, I guess he is. Yeah, I guess that's true.
If anyone's wondering about my humor style, it's like half non sequiturs.
Yeah. This is kind of a difficult one to do on a podcast, but I'm very into it. Fourth Man sent in a image, and it says, he captioned it, "How and why are you going to hell? Pick related." And it's a list, I assume from a religious institution, of things that are going to get you sent to hell because, quote, they are components of Satan's spiritual structure.
Oh, I didn't know there was a structure.
Yeah.
What is the list?
Oh, this is good stuff. This is why I wanted to do this. So it includes some stuff that's obvious. Mm. The Church of Satan. Yeah, fair. Astrology. Okay. Voodoo. Yeah. Wicca. All those things you would assume are bad religions if you think Christianity is the right one. Fine.
I just gotta let you know that I'm out right now because I did dabble in LaVeyan Satanism when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. I take it that just like reading the book and being like, hey, this is kind of cool is enough to get you excluded. So I'm out already, but it may not be my favorite one. So keep going down the list.
Yeah, no, I was softballing you at first, but it's about to get wild. Yeah, Leon?
And I really like Gemini Man from a Mega Man game.
Okay,
I love you, Leon.
That was a good astrology joke. So here's some more. Right. Vegetarianism.
Oh, I'm a vegetarian now, so or
Straight
at least
to-
for the past month or so.
Straight
so.
to hell.
Oh, darn.
Lycanthropy.
Not yet, but
My mind is open.
Postmodernism.
Okay, yeah, I'm absolutely gone now. That's twice.
like as a criticism or as the art style, because that is a very broad. It has like cultural
Leon,
components. You know,
postmodernism is a lifestyle.
It doesn't specify,
It's
but I
very
assume both.
sarcastic.
I feel like the fact that I'm trying to dissect postmodernism is itself postmodern.
Yeah.
So I think I just sent myself to hell.
Necromancy. Levitation. I just love a lot of these because it just assumes that they're possible, which is very exciting for me.
Yeah.
Alt comics, and comics with an X and then in quotation marks, which is like a colloquial term for like the indie comic scene, I guess.
Indie comics are gonna send me to hell?
Like mouse.
Also, marijuana and pot parties. So, first of all, I thought this was, when I read that at first, I was like, oh, this is published in like the 40s because it says marijuana, like fucking reefer madness. But at the bottom it says the Twilight films. So I don't know what era.
I have seen all of them, as anyone who has seen my show knows. So, I mean, I did. Wait a minute. I didn't enjoy them. Does that help?
It says do not take part in any of these components of Satan's spiritual structure.
I did.
It doesn't say
I
don't
definitely
enjoy.
did.
I watched
Yeah.
only some of the Twilight films, and I didn't care for them either. But all right,
That's
I guess.
fine.
Also, enjoyment can't be the gatekeeper because most of these are super enjoyable. So,
Yeah. Especially
also-
postmodernism and vegetarianism. Those are like super enjoyable.
video games. Yes,
I'm-
absolutely. That's that.
I'm sorry, Leon.
Oh,
I'm not critiquing
in
your
that-
lifestyle. You know, like
Yeah.
it's not considered to be the most opulent dietitian decisions.
Jesus.
I really like it
Yeah,
because
that's-
there's a lot of
that's fine.
there's Indian food and that's good.
Yeah, I love
but anyway, no. Well, in terms of the video games, I mean, I may have been. I'm born again compared to you guys.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying we're all very guilty. Harry Potter, Dungeons and Dragons, Halloween. I assume the holiday and not the film, the John Carpenter film, but both probably.
Probably.
yeah. I mean, I'm not. Most of these are like that's silly. No one thinks that. But as I mentioned in the previous episode, I used to teach at a Christian school, and Halloween was verboten there, like in a way that surprised me.
How almighty can your God be if he's threatened by people dressing up as Captain America?
It surprised me because like I went to Catholic school growing up and Halloween was very big there, so I just assumed that this non-denominational Christian school would also be at least neutral to the topic.
Oh no, Leon! The whole landscape changed after the Satanist scares of the 1980s. You know, the completely fictional ones that weren't real.
But I grew up. I was in that school in the 80s and 90s, so I don't know. Basically, I went in and Halloween was coming up, and I was really excited, so I shared that interest with my students. And I was like, "Oh, Halloween's coming up. Where are you guys? What are you guys going as? Do you still do that at your age, or are you just going to parties? Is that fun? I don't know. Be careful on mischief night, stuff like that." And they were all like, "No, we're not supposed to." And then the Bible class teacher, who was like always in the room during homeroom because we like shared that moment, she went on this big anti-Halloween rant, and I'm just sitting there, and the kids know I really like Halloween. I'm just sitting there like, don't say shit, kids, and they didn't rat me out, which was very nice. But yeah, that was a thing. Sorry, I went off into my own tangent.
No, it's great, and I just love the cowardice of people who presume to speak for the Almighty. Other entries on this list: rock music and heavy metal. Which
Austin, that cinches it. We're doomed.
we are very doomed, but there is a lot of loopholes for alternative and indie and folk and progressive rock. I feel like they didn't really cover their bases there.
Your genre selection is weak, Satan.
Is Radiohead okay? It's not clear. And the last one I wanted to call attention to was it just says Skull and Bones, which I'm not sure, is that like just the Jolly Roger, like pirates,
No,
or is it just like
it might be the secret
fraternity?
society.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Yale.
But that's like, how many kids are getting into the hip skull and bones society?
Maybe,
that's like a very elite group.
Maybe, guys, this is like one of those super secret codified sex acts. Like,
give her the old skull and bones.
Did you give her the skull and bones?
Yeah.
Nah, dude. I can't. We don't have enough ceiling clearance.
I haven't taken my calcium supplements. Yeah. So I think we're out of time. Most of these are hurricane questions. Thank you, everybody. If this is our last episode, thank you for joining us. It was a blast.
Oh, we'll have a memorial podcast for you. Don't worry.
Yeah. I will be missed. I was delightful.
I'll make sure that's on your headstone, my friend. As well as should have learned to swim better.
Mm-hmm. I thought it would come naturally. I was wrong.
All right. Do you want to? Unless you guys have anything else to say, we can click the button.
I just want to say thanks for joining the Squeaky Chair podcast, everybody.
Yeah. Oh God, it was so bad, Austin. I couldn't even pay attention.
I'm trying to make it squeak, and it's not really doing it. Maybe it's fully lubed now.
Oh, great.
I would recommend that if it starts squeaking again, then you should probably take a screwdriver to some screws. Because in my experience, that is actually the first reason why a chair starts to squeak.
Yeah.
Not lubrication, improperly anchored screws.
I gotta lube it.
Yeah.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay. To lube or to screw. Okay, it's time to go. Let's leave.
There's Leon's famous sign off. It's time to go. Let's leave.